listening. And again, public meeting, we expect a certain amount of decorum. If things get out of hand, we may ask you, some people would. Once you give your testimony, you're free to leave. You can sit and listen, but there won't be any additional, comments from the Marine Board or opportunities for individuals to speak. With that, does anybody have any basic question on how this process is going to work?
Hi, Alan.
How are you, Ann?
Good. Yeah, you said that this is not the forum to ask questions, but is there going to be a forum where we could ask staff questions about your recommendation?
So you can send us emails. That would be the best way to do. I don't believe we're taking comments regarding the rogue at the board meeting. Is that correct?
Correct, because we'll be past the public comment period at that time.
So feel free to email.
So it is the board meeting, or the meeting on the 23rd. Where is that going to be at?
That's going to be at our Salem office.
Okay.
The public is welcome.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? If none, we have Senator Golden here. I would ask, give him the opportunity to come forward and present if he chooses to do so.
I'm going to do that because I have a doctor's appointment. It's a little embarrassing to get shoved in the front of the room. Thank you.
Well, if you would like to wait, you're welcome to accept.
Well, it's not that embarrassing.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity to give testimony. I'm Jeff Golden, and I live in Ashland, and I represent most of the Rogue Valley in the Oregon State Senate. In the abundant testimony and comment on this issue over the last year and more, there are 3 points in particular that I think deserve underscoring. I'd like to go through them very quickly. Number 1, the Rogue's world-class anadromous fish runs are in trouble. The problem has several causes, and no set of rules you develop will fully set things straight. At the same time, the record includes a well-documented report from Dr. Michael Parker of Southern Oregon University that strongly points to high-power jet boat traffic on the upper Rogue throughout the year as a probable factor. Any attempt to restore healthy runs will be hampered if that traffic continues. Precautionary principle steers us away from high-powered jet boat use on this stretch of the river. Number 2, different kinds of river use have very different impacts. We know from years of comments and testimony that the noise and turbulence of high-powered jet boats degrades the experience of some portion of non-motorized users, boaters, anglers, swimmers, picnickers that come to enjoy the peacefulness of the river. The reverse is not true. A swimmer, angler, or beachgoer is extremely unlikely to affect the experience of a commercial jet boat operator or passenger. If the goal here is to provide the most positive experience for the greatest number of river users, we have to keep that discrepancy in mind. And number 3, bringing high-powered jet boat traffic to an end above the Table Rock Bridge wouldn't come close to eliminating commercial jet boat use of the Rogue River. A substantial majority of the 132 river miles from that bridge down to the mouth of the river are open to commercial jet boats, and you can find them profitably operating on several stretches of the river. In fact, the jet boat operator at the center of this controversy does robust business from Tubell Park downstream to a recreational area where he hosts jet boat passengers. And I haven't heard anyone propose barring that enterprise. Whatever you decide in this process, jet boats are and will continue to be an important part of the multi-use mix on this river. Blending these 3 considerations brings me to strong support for a final set of rules that restricts motorized boat traffic at all times from Tubell State Park upstream to the William Jess Dam to motors of 10 horsepower or less. As I understand it, this aligns closely with the single position that by a wide margin has the most support in the accumulated testimony and correspondence of the past few months. More than that, it's the path, in my judgment, that would lead to the most authentic and publicly beneficial multi-use protocol for this extraordinarily valuable recreational resource. Thanks for your diligent work on this complex issue and for your consideration of my perspective. Thank you very much.
So with that, let's take the first two people online, beginning with Will Johnson, and then once Mr. Johnson's done, Emily Grimes. Mr. Will Johnson, are you available?
Yes, I'm here.
Ah, perfect, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
I had to go pull my dog away from the fence. Well, here we are again, talking about this issue and providing more testimony in regards to this. And this has been an incredibly frustrating thing for me to watch. One thing that just keeps kind of recurring to me over and over is just how much effort we've put into, protecting and emboldening our anadromous fish runs in this river. We've had 2 large-scale dam removals take place, one Savage Rapids and then one Gold Ray Dam, just downstream in sort of the area that we're talking about. And also Lost Creek Lake, which doesn't provide a lot of power, but does provide an incredible amount of cold water refugia for our anadromous fish. When they come in, they start coming in, and the spring fish come in earliest in the year, and then we have followed by summer steelhead, and they really use this section of river that we're talking about because they can't be sustained lower down in the warmer water. So they move up into this colder water to stage, until they spawn, and they'll start doing so really early in the year. And so we have a tremendous amount of fish, a tremendous amount of recreation available in this area that is incredibly unique to the Rogue River in regards to many other rivers and fisheries. And we have this opportunity to protect these fish and to recreate with these fish. And the experience that we're having with the jet boat traffic is just completely degrading that. I own and run the Ashland Fly Shop in Ashland. We book guides for steelhead starting on this river as early as late June into July. And I just get countless and countless accounts from people that have gone out with our guides and just have a very unsatisfactory experience because they're always dodging this, to the point of where they're telling me that they don't want to come back in this time frame because of the jet boat traffic and the fact that they have to consistently dodge this situation. So I have seen a definite drop off in my summer steelhead bookings in this time frame, and I'm really appalled that we are continually working around this one user, this one outfit, this one small business. We're making all of these concessions around this one thing
Your
to
3 minutes up. I appreciate your testimony today. Now, Ms. Grimes.
Hi, I am not going to be commenting at this time. I'm just listening. I'm submitting my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So then let's take 2 people from the room. We have Mr. Charles here, I believe, and Mr. Pete Peterson. I apologize if I mess up any names, but feel free to correct me. If both of you want to come up, we can hear from Mr. Gear first and then Mr. Peterson. Thank you.
Excuse me. Good afternoon. My name is Charles Gear. I'm the Southern Oregon coordinator for the Native Fish Society. Native Fish Society is an Oregon-based conservation nonprofit that exists to cultivate a groundswell of public support needed to revive abundant wild native fish, free-flowing rivers, and thriving local communities across the Pacific Northwest. I'm personally a resident of the Rogue watershed who floats and fishes the stretches of river affected by this proposed rule. From the outset, there has been widespread concern about the impacts of large capacity, high powered jet boats operating on the upper Rogue. The Native Fish Society has continuing concerns over the long-term effects of wave action on critical streamside vegetation, protection of spawning habitat for salmon and steelhead, as well as the unknown impacts of repeated jet boat traffic on oversummering spring Chinook. As a boater who floats this river, I've raised concerns over potentially very serious safety issues with large jet boats traveling at high speeds through shallow blind corners and back channels. In reading through this proposed rule, it seems that it has been crafted so as not to affect a singular private enterprise operating on a public resource, with less importance on wild native fish populations that already face a list of challenges. It is also worth noting that the only jet boat users negatively affected by this proposed regulation are the fishing guides who have for years been extremely careful not to impact wild native fish. The Native Fish Society continues to be concerned for the well-being of spring Chinook that spend the summer in the cooler water pools of the upper Rogue. There's little known about the impacts of large jet boats on spring Chinook during the summer months, yet we do know they are present in the water downstream of Table Rock Road. We also know that wild spring Chinook have been struggling for years, and there is currently a petition to list these fish under the Endangered Species Act. Out of an abundance of caution, we would ask for greater protections specifically for wild spring Chinook. Greater detail will be provided in written comments due to time constraints, but the Native Fish Society strongly encourages you to deny this proposed rule as written and make changes that seek to protect our wild native fish populations and enhance the safety and enjoyment of all river users.
Thank you very much. Mr. Peterson.
Hi, I'm Pete Peterson. And thankful for your meeting today. We went through a enormous amount of discussion in the last meeting and meeting before, 10 years before. My real concerns are we're facing probably one of the poorest runs of steelhead that I've witnessed in 40 years. We're on a year where the salmon and salmon returns are next. As a guide industry, the salmon fishing and salmon opportunity for business is pretty much, those guys are done. As a fly fisherman and a steelhead guide, it's just discouraging to have less than 600 hatchery fish, which aren't the health of the river. But the wild fish also followed suit this year to have the worst run ever and not have any. The river itself will only lose by the proposal from our Marine Board. I challenge them to make better decisions to make improvements. It's not the only improvement we need to make, but it's a chance for us to get back something positive. On a declining cycle, if we don't change that declining cycle, it just continues and grows. I was also very disappointed that the Marine Board has issued violations for fly fishermen and riverboats against the jet boat user that stood in the room and called everybody liars. I'm disappointed that the Marine Board can't see such a bad character on a river that we use. If they were within that use themselves, they could understand even better on the river of some of the objections we're trying to overcome. There's been several, not hundreds, but lots of different people give testimony on the safety values on the river. We've been given a violation for a safety violation. A fly fishing friend of mine was given that violation for not allowing a jet boat to pass. You could have put a barge to passing. So my concerns is all of the different people that have given testimony on this same type of issue, that he hasn't been subjected once to a fine, and we're fined. We're not the abusers. And until we just take a hard look, I'm also disappointed in the county's position to be neutral. They were neutral when we brought in all the marijuana grows and everything they've constructed within our valley, and given our valley a whole different concept of who we are. By changing this, we're changing the profile of the river to be a blues cruise and a great place to jet boat and squirrel. The Rogue River and all of our participants that live here, because of the Rogue River, is profiled as a blue ribbon stream. We're not treating it as well by not making better decisions towards that. Thank you.
So we'll give Ms. Peggy Wright 3 minutes and followed by Miss Lisa James, who are both online. Ms. Wright, feel free to go ahead.
Peggy, you're on mute.
Miss Wright, you're on mute. Could you unmute yourself?
There should be, there you go.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so for me, this is a safety issue. My husband and I have an inflatable kayak. We'd go down various parts of the Rogue in the summer. I want to say that we have been stranded on a rock due to the wake of a jet boat and had to wait for the next jet boat to come by in order to get off of it. It was not an area where we could get out of the boat. We were basically just stranded there. The jet boat driver was absolutely didn't slow. We were being good neighbors. We were off to the side. And they did not slow down. So as far as I can tell, the jet boat drivers are not paying attention. And this was a commercial jet boat. And in the upper Rogue, we're looking at a fairly narrow area. In the summer, when it's 105, the flow is low. The number of people who are out on their inflatable kayaks, including moms with their kids. I could be out there with my grandchildren, is rather high. There is not a lot of room to move around. When you've got a fair number of rocks there, you don't have a lot of room to be able to make choices about how you're going to get downstream. So my ability to move out of the way of a jet boat driver in these particular cases, and by the way, I do try to do that, is not really very high. And I'll tell you, I am terrified. I am absolutely terrified. The people who do the fishing on this part of the Rogue, they're fine. They're good neighbors. They don't get in the way. We don't get in their way. They don't get in our way. But the jet boat drivers don't have the same ethics. And I'm afraid that what is going to happen is that there's going to be a very bad accident at some point in time. In this area of the Rogue. There's just not the maneuverability, and there's just too many people. And that's really my concern. I think it is a huge mistake to allow jet boats on this particular area. It's really going to create problems with public safety. And that's basically what I have to say. Also, I do want to say that I've had in the area down by Grants Pass, I've been in a boat with my grandchildren who were out for the first time, and the two jet boat drivers paired up and basically started at the same time and created a very large wake, which scared my grandkids. And this is really not acceptable behavior. So I think you really need to think about this.
Thank you,
This
Ms.
is a problem.
2 minutes
Okay.
is expired. I appreciate
Thank you
that.
very much.
Miss Lisa James.
Yes, well, here we are again. I'm sorry that this is not interactive and that you won't answer questions. I want to add that I am also disappointed in the current proposed rules. I'm more than disappointed. I am disgusted. I am disgusted and angry that the majority have now spoken out over and over for years, the majority, and you write a rule that enshrines the one business that is disrupting everything else. We have been the canaries in the coal mine. We have been the ones that raised the flag to warn you of the dangers, of the ecological degradation, of the impacts that we see happening, have seen, have videoed, have researched, have presented to you. And yet you write rules that enshrine the exact operations of this business, that conflicts and overrides and dominates everything else that has happened on this fragile stretch of the Upper Rogue River for decades and eons. This has been the safe place for non-motorized users and drift boaters to float down and know exactly how long it's going to take them if they go in at Dodge Bridge or to Tacoma Park or Shady Cove to get to Tuville, which was the really last safe place to take out. And now this overrides, and you write rules to enshrine them? Did you just hand it over to Rogue Jet Boat Adventures and ask them to write the rules that would help protect every aspect of their business? Is there any thought to the fact that the boats are already too big, bigger than they said they would ever use when they started out with a 10-seater and said they would never go above 16 seats due to the special nature of the Upper Rogue River, but their next boat was 18 and their next boat was 25. And if you'd like to take 53 people, we'll just bring them all in succession and spin around over the reds of the salmons. There's nothing that says they can't, if now you limit them to 300 rides per year, what's to stop them from getting bigger boats and bigger boats? There's nothing, there's no mitigating rule at all in what you're proposing. It is disgusting. I am sad, I'm angry. I am so disappointed that my representatives that my taxes pay for, your staff that presented this, and the board that's supposed to represent all of us can't take in 1 point of the majority of comments and submissions that have been made over and over. You are taking the minority viewpoint to support one business dominating everybody else and putting everybody in jeopardy for their businesses, their livelihood of fishing guides, and their recreation that had been a safe place for non-motorized users. Please rethink it, revisit it, and correct it. I, as a tax-paying citizen, demand it.
All right, thank you, Ms. James. So now we'll hear from Kathy Knuckles, followed by Ann Batzer. Go ahead, come forward, Ms. Knuckles. Sit wherever you would like.
Reading a statement from the city of Shady Cove.
Okay, and you've got 3 minutes. Thank you.
The city of Shady Cove would like to thank the Oregon State Marine Board for its efforts to date on the Upper Rogue River rulemaking effort. We thank you for recognizing the seriousness of the Upper Rogue problem, for recognizing the varied nature of the Upper Rogue in terms of topography and established traditional uses, and for recognizing that a one-size-fits-all multi-use policy is not always the best policy. Though the draft rule addresses the entirety of what has been referred to as the Upper Rogue River, the city of Shady Cove reiterates that its interests are only with a section of this waterway that extends from Dodge Bridge upriver to the dam at Lost Creek Lake. For this stretch of river, the draft rule specifies a 10 horsepower maximum. The city of Shady Cove requests that this language be accepted without modification or added exceptions. Throughout the rulemaking process, the Marine Board has solicited expert testimony from all of the stakeholders, and without exception, all testimony has supported this 10 horsepower maximum for the upper section of the Upper Rogue River. The Marine Patrol reports confirm that non-motorized boaters and inexperienced rafters flock to this section of the river. Rogue Jet Boat Adventures confirms that jet boat use is not appropriate here. ODFW strongly recommends no jet boats for the preservation of threatened and endangered fish species. And the city of Shady Cove has proven that its economy depends on the established rafting and drip boat communities and industries that thrive on this section of the river. The draft rule as written is a fair and reasonable compromise that aligns well with the stakeholder and expert recommendations and testimony, while still providing a stretch of the river on which jet boats can recreate and conduct business. In response, the city of Shady Cove, as a jurisdictional stakeholder on the Upper Rogue River, requests that the draft language be adopted into law as is, as it pertains to the upper section of the Upper Rogue River. That's it. Thank you very much.
Ms. Batzer? Feel free to start.
Okay. Through the Freedom of Information Act, we have documents from many years of Oregon State Marine Board comments on this issue. One of the first emails that expresses OSMB's concern about jet boats on the Upper Rogue is an internal email written by then Boating Safety Program Manager Randy Henry. This is 8 years ago in 2016. He says in that email that the owner of Rogue Jet Boat Adventures, Taylor Grimes, has found what he calls a loophole and is continuing to operate his jet tour boat business, which means trouble for OSMB. But what I want to focus on in the short time I have today are the recent emails to OSMB. And we have looked at and read everything that you received through October 16th, and also requested everything that you will get through January 23rd. Here's an analysis of what you have received so far. 124 persons requested a 15 horsepower limit on watercraft from Fishers Ferry to Lost Creek Dam. An additional 633 persons requested a 15 horsepower limit on watercraft from the Table Rock Road Bridge to Lost Creek Dam. 63 persons took the time to describe personal, frightening, sometimes life-threatening experiences with the RJBA tour boats. 13 persons identified themselves as Rogue River fishing guides and sent in comments of personal experience requesting regulations on jet boats on the Upper Rogue River. Only 22 persons requested the continued allowance of jet boats on the Upper Rogue. In addition, we submitted 123 pages from Oregon Parks and Recreation Department's 2022 outreach. We could have submitted many more pages, but we thought 123 was probably enough. Members of the public answered the question, what could have gone better during your visit to Tuville Park? These pages have entries from at least 5 individuals on each page describing personal negative experiences with the tour boats. I'm running out of time, but I want to list the number of groups who also commented. Native Fish Society and the Center for Biological Diversity, KS Wild and Rogue River Keeper, American Fisheries Society, Trout Unlimited, Southern Oregon Climate Action Now, Rogue Fly Fishers, Rogue Valley Audubon Society, McLeod Watershed, and the Wild Salmon Center. So if OSMB is really interested in public input, I hope that this will be evident in the board's decision.
Thank you. And I appreciate you regulating your time, but that reminds me, if I cut you off, you are free to provide written comment until
December 20th.
December 20th.
Kind of,
Yeah.
And the
So with that, David T from online, followed by Liv Colin.
I think, person dropped off.
David T dropped off.
David is on.
Oh, David, if you're on, go ahead and unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
Was that David T?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Go ahead. You have 3
Awesome,
minutes.
thank you. Sorry, I'm out in the woods here, so I can't do the camera. I'm going to talk mostly about the section from Dodge Bridge to Tuville. It's a section that I've been floating for over 20 years before my kids were born. My kid's 21 now. I floated it with my 80-year-old parents, 3 generations of us floating together. It's a very rare section that it's, doesn't have a lot of traffic, and it's mostly class 1 and 2. It's a very safe section. We floated it in kayaks, rafts, stand-up paddle boards, and even my teenage son has done it in an inner tube. So, it's just a great section for families. And we've been sharing it with drift boats and fishermen and other river users, swimmers, picnickers for years, for decades, for generations, literally. Since Rogue Jet Adventures has been increasing their presence out there, we've just had more and more issues. I'm going to talk to 3 personal experiences. The first was I was out with my friend Mike. He'd never been in this section before. He's not an experienced kayaker. We were pulled over on the bank and they came by. They didn't slow down. and they capsized him. He flew right out of the boat. Now, obviously, I could handle it because I know how to kayak, but he's a beginner, and that's what this section is for, is beginners, and he capsized. It was pretty upsetting. They didn't slow down. They didn't wave or apologize. And I'm not going to generalize about all of the jet boat from Rogue Jet Adventures. I'm sure some of them have more etiquette than others, but that time they did not, that's for sure. The second time we were coming around a turn, and there was a tight section with some kind of class 1 rapids, and my kids were in front of me. And all of a sudden, come around this blind corner is one of the Rogue Jet big boats, and there's no room to pass, and they can't turn around. And so I'm screaming at my children, get to the left, river left, river left. And they paddle over to the left, and they get over the bank, and they have to jet by at a decent speed to get through those rapids. And once again, it causes a big wake. They don't fall out, but it's terrifying. It's not a safe place to have someone tearing around a blind corner in a one-way section of river where, basically the kids in the kayaks have to get out of the way of the adults in a high-speed, dangerous boat. The third situation was all three generations were out picnicking at a little bank that we had floated down to, and we had a nice picnic set up, and one of their drivers comes flying by and doesn't slow down, and this massive wave comes up on the bank and just washes our picnic away. My poor 80-year-old parents can barely get in and out of the boat. And it's just not appropriate. We've been doing this for so long. We know that this is not how the river should be shared. A couple other things. The erosion, the undercutting of the banks. We can see riparian trees falling into the river way more than they used to. They're going to blame it on dam removal. They're going to say their stuff doesn't do it. But you don't need to be a rocket scientist or a wildlife biologist to sit on that bank and see those massive waves come up and see the turbidity created by it. They do 360s. It's like a high-speed thrill ride. It is not the nature and the historic use of this section of river. And it's not only dangerous, it's environmentally damaging. It's bad for the economy of our area, all the other businesses that are being hurt by this. And you're definitely making accommodations for one private business. I highly recommend that you do
Mr.
not
T,
adopt it and you
you're
take
3
a
minutes
15
out of
horsepower
time.
limit upstream of Two Bell. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your testimony. Is Lynn Collin no longer? So how about a phone number ending in 9355? Is that person still online?
I'm still there. And it is *6 to unmute your telephone.
Telephone number ending in 9355. Hit *6 and you are welcome to testify. Okay, they don't
Maybe we'll come back.
back that person. So at this time, I'd like to invite Rania Haddad and Bob Hunter. And so Ms. Haddad has 3 minutes, followed by Mr. Bob Hunter.
My name is Rania Haddad. For 25 years, I've lived about a quarter mile downstream of Rattlesnake Rapids. I daily experience firsthand the Rogue Jet Boat Adventures operations. I'd like to share one of my many negative experiences with RJBA. Once the tour boats return from Rattlesnake, they traditionally do a thrill maneuver upstream from my home. This season, they did it over the bed where the Chinook spawn. Chinook are listed as threatened. This year, I only saw 2 salmon spawning, not the dozens I used to see. I also noticed most of the gravel from the spawning bed was gone. Of course, the decline is not only due to the jet boat, but we must do what we can to protect the state-sensitive species. After learning from PhD aquatics ecologist Michael Parker about how jet boats disrupt processes essential to salmon, I'm even more concerned. Conflict with the tour boat started back in 2014. This was when he had one 10-passenger boat and was allowed to run 4 trips a day under the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department's pilot program. Due to conflict, OPRD's director terminated that pilot program. The conflict continues, which is why a petition was made in 17 to OSMB to limit the horsepower. Here we are in 2024. Things have gotten much worse, even more safety issues, more conflicts, more sensitive salmon and reptiles listed as sensitive, more river loss, more loss of riverbank trees, more erosion from wakes that destroys the river margins and destroy the food sources for fish and wildlife. The proposed ruling for the commercial tour boat does not solve anything. Their season and hours of operations remain the same. Yes, it's proposed to limit the number of trips to 300. Who will enforce that? Who's to say that he won't trade on those leased boats for 50 or 80 passenger boat and still make the trip limit amount? In the newspaper locally, Grimes said because of the nature of the upper road, he could never operate a boat rated for more than 16 passengers. The following year, he leased an 18 passenger boat. In 21, he leased an additional 25 passenger boat. Please, I'm pleading with you, restrict use of motors in excess of 10 horsepower, at least from Table Rock Road Bridge to Dam.
Mr. Hunter?
Hello, my name is Bob Hunter and I live out Bruce, Oregon. And I just want to address the Marine Board and their proposed rule. Proposed 10 horsepower motor limitation does give year-round protection to Rogue River upstream of Dodge Bridge and seasonal protections from Fishers Ferry upstream between September 10th and May 8th. These protections are a good thing, but they fail to go far enough to protect public safety, protect traditional uses, prevent user conflicts, and to protect the upper Rogue River salmon and steelhead. Unfortunately, the proposed rule does nothing to meaningfully limit or restrict the current tour boat operations of Rogue Jet Boat Adventures or any other charter boat. The existing tour charter boat business will still be able to operate from Fishers Ferry upstream to Rattlesnake Rapids from May 8th to September 10th, which is its current season and area of operation. Though the proposal limits business operations to 300 trips per year upstream of Table Rock Road, this is a meaningless restriction, both because the business currently does not do more than 300 trips per year upstream of Table Rock Road Bridge, and because it is virtually unenforceable. The proposed rule also has a time of day restriction for charter boats, but that also coincides with the business's normal tour schedule. In other words, the proposed rule will not mitigate or at all affect the adverse impacts, safety concerns, or conflicts created by the current tour boat operations upstream of Table Rock Road Bridge to Rattlesnake Rapids. It is obvious that the exceptions carved out in the proposed rule are designed to ensure that the current operations of the tour boat business are not impacted, thereby putting a single incompatible commercial interest over the interests of public safety, protecting fish and wildlife and the environment, traditional uses, guides, fishermen, landowners, and users of a state park and a state range. It is obvious that these exceptions carved out in the proposed rule basically allow one business to continue to co-opt and exploit for personal gain what had been a wonderful and heavily used community resource. And worse, ignores a petition signed by more than 2,000 people and by over 800 people who commented on the Oregon State Park Survey, input to the fishing table, and the weight of the testimony provided to the board on the rulemaking process. I'm going to skip some parts because Ms. Botzer covered the testimony and things that you received. But after all the process, surveys, public testimony, petitions, and hearings, the Marine Board has decided to ignore the public, the facts, and its own mission to protect one commercial venture over the interests of citizens of this state. We are back at square one as far as addressing the impacts of the current tour boat operations. And it's those impacts that have really driven people to come out and start these processes and the petition. The conflicts will continue, the environment will continue to be degraded, and eventually someone will be killed or seriously injured in the section of the rule fails to protect. It is a severe breach of public trust.
Thank you.
And I'll submit my public comments, and there's a proposed modification of the rule.
Thank you. So let's go back to the individual online with the phone number in the 9355. Feel free to unmute yourself. Anybody else online?
No, you got everybody else.
So let's go to Matt. Gordy from White City and Rick Groff from Medford. Again, apologize if I mispronounce your name.
You nailed it. Yeah, good.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Got 3 minutes there.
So, my name's Matt Gordy. I'm with, Rogue Jet Boat Works and, the general manager there. I'm just here to read a letter from Bruce Wassum. I'm going to read it as he wrote it. To all concerned, I am Bruce Wassum, founder and owner of Rogue Jet Boat Works. We manufacture all welded aluminum boats here in Medford. I started Rogue Jet Boat Works in 2003. Previously, I was founder and owner of Jetcraft Boats, and prior to that was part owner of River Marine here in Medford. I have been using the Rogue River for fishing, rafting, drift boating, and jet boating for 50 plus years. 60+% of our boats are custom built for fishing game, national parks, law enforcement, Army Corps of Engineers, and numerous government agencies. Approximately 70% of these boats are inboard jet boats. Oregon State Marine Board has made a proposal to close the Rogue River to jet boating from Fishers Ferry ramp to Lost Creek Dam for approximately 8 months of the year. I believe the possible rationale for doing this might be based on damage to spawning salmon nesting locations, bank erosion, political pressure, or safety. I believe none of these are a valid reason for closing the river. There has never been any evidence of a safety issue, so that is probably not a factor. Political pressure could be a factor, but should not be a factor. Erosion of the riverbanks should also not be a factor, since most all of the bank erosion is caused by high water during the winter months here on the Rogue River. We do have 3 locations below Tuville Table Rock Bridge that do need to be addressed in the very near future. During high water, the river is going to erode into the Bill Levins Gravel Pit Lake, the Rogue Jet Adventure Gravel Pit Lake, and just below Bear Creek. If the river changes course into either pond, it's not going to have a good outcome. The only possible criteria left for closing the river for 8 months would be spawning salmon. If this is the case, we must have scientific data and research to back this up. I would be surprised if local fish and game department has much data below the Rattlesnake Rapids or Tuville Table Rock Bridge on salmon nesting. I have never seen any fish and game employees below the bridge at Tuville. I am on the river in this section sometimes multiple times a day and at least a few times a week. Recently, I spent multiple hours talking to Steve Byerland from Gold Beach and former ODFW biologist Tom Satterway, sorry. Tom has emailed me volumes of data on the Upper Rogue River salmon and steelhead, and I have that report here. To my understanding, prior to Lost Creek Dam being constructed, approximately 80% of the spring Chinook salmon spawned above Shady Cove. When the dam was constructed, the spring salmon lost a third of their spawning grounds. Today, approximately 80% of the spring Chinook spawn above the Dodge Bridge. We have very few Chinook spawning below Rattlesnake Rapids. Most of the salmon nests I see active in this section of river are in late October, and these fish would be fall Chinook.
Thank you. I appreciate this. And we will accept that as public or written testimony.
It's been submitted. Thank you.
Mr. Groff.
Yes.
Feel free, 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. I want to give an analogy here. We just finished Thanksgiving and celebrate that with friends and family, and everybody was welcome at my house, including children. However, there ended up being between approximately a dozen kids between the ages of 3 and 7 years old. They got into the desserts ahead of time, and they were all in one room of the house. And these kids picked up on sugar, were going nuts, right? So too much energy in the room, fearful of things breaking, asked them to go outside, go down to the park, down the block and play out there where they couldn't do harm. Why do I mention this? Well, that's the analogy we have with jet boats on the river. Jet boats bring an awful lot of energy into the system through waves and noise. Now, in a wide, deep river, that does much less damage. But when you bring that amount of energy into a smaller system like the Upper Rogue, it has much better chance of doing damage, both to shore erosion, to the bottom of your river. And I think that's what Dr. Michael Parker was trying to get at with his 85 papers that he cited there. And I understand that. I understand that well. If this was an environmental impact statement, we would have to do all the research ahead of time and go through an environmental disclosure process, but that's not the way this process works. So we don't have that advantage here. We could only bring forward the studies from Alaska all the way down to New Zealand and think, what's this going to do to our system here? Well, looking through the rule, I believe, that in Dr. Parker's recommendations, slow down when you approach wildlife, slow down when you approach other boaters or other people there, have no wakes when you go past the system, and keep the noise level down when you go through wildlife or near wildlife. Unfortunately, these are very difficult things to enforce practically. You would have to have someone out watching every stretch of the way, not just the commercial jet boaters, but also the private jet boaters too. These people have very powerful crafts in their power. So the only practical way I think to address this is through implementing a 10 horsepower restriction from Fishers Ferry Park all the way up to Lost Creek Dam. And the last thing I want to mention, I very much would like the Marine Board to post signs at every boat launch along the river here, along the upper stretch, stating whatever you decide in terms of the rules, post them on the river and post the number where we could call for a complaint. That is currently not available right now. And I think it's something we desperately need. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else on?
Yeah.
So Mark Smith, go ahead and unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes to present your comments.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't really planning to comment. I was just planning to listen, but I have written in before. And I guess I have sort of a harsh opinion. I grew up in Grants Pass during the 1960s, 1970s, have since moved out of town. But nevertheless, my dad lives on the river. And we were, back in the day, we spent a lot of time on the river, anywhere from Gleese all the way up to Casey Park. And I'm not as familiar with the jet boat operations in the upper river, but certainly the lower river. And I think it's indisputable that there are impacts caused by the jet boats, whether it's shore erosion, what have you. But the river is clearly in decline. The fishery is suffering. The river is, in my opinion, poorly managed. And it's going to take something harsh to straighten it up. And that includes powerboats. Might not be a popular opinion, but I think they all should take a timeout. Same for fishing, for that matter. I don't fish anymore. Caught lots of fish in my day and feel guilty about it. Refuse to go these days. But bottom line, I guess, boats, a private entity should not profit off of a public resource. And there's got to be a better way. And protection of the river really is the bottom line. If we don't protect it, there's going to be nothing left. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Appreciate your comments. Now online person, phone number ending in 6333.
Just dropped off.
He just dropped off. So do we have an individual named TJ online? Feel free to unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes. I see DJ is there.
Muted.
So how about online phone number ending 9355? Are you there still? Okay. So let's go with Greg Ingram and followed by John Hamilton.
Good afternoon. My name's Greg Ingram, born and raised in Medford, Oregon. And I started fishing Tuville in 1956 on my bicycle. I ride it out there and fish for trout. So I've been a long time user of it, one of the, probably the longest users of the Rogue River at Tuville. I'm not a supporter of the commercial business that's doing business below Tuville. I have a 16-foot aluminum weld sled boat with a 65-horse jet boat pump on it. And it's a very, very quiet. I fish the river. I don't run the river to make noise, yell and scream. I'm out there fishing. I fish every Friday. That's my day to go to Tuville. And what you're asking with this Oregon Marine Board proposal is you're going to be shutting down a hobby that I've had for over 50 years. In 1859, February 14th, the state of Oregon designated the Rogue River as a navigable river. And what that means is it is open to commercial use and private general public use. So we already have a ruling in place on the Rogue River, and I don't believe that we need to have additional rules and regulations for the usage of the Rogue River below below Rattlesnake. I don't personally run above Rattlesnake. I don't know of many people that do run above Rattlesnake. I tried it one time and it cost me $500 deductible from my insurance because I blew my motor up. So that's really a well-known stopping point on the Rogue River for power boaters. I believe one of the things that's caused this meeting, in addition to the commercial business that's giving tours, they're like a school bus going up and down the river. They do make big waves, but the drivers that I've talked to and see every week are pretty darn courteous when it goes to going by me, and I'm sitting there, you know, at Mason's Hole fishing, and they slow down and they idle by. But to stop the general public from being able to use a public river, I think is wrong. I can't support it. And I would say that I appreciate the interest, but that's kind of my position on it. Thank you.
Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak here, and for coming all the way down to Medford. One of the reasons that I moved here 30 years ago was the world famous Rogue River and its fishing, the opportunity to fish this unique river. I pay taxes here in the county. I pay registration to the Marine Board for my drift boat. I pay for state fishing licenses. And I pay for passes to use the boat ramps. I have friends that come up here and visit me and we fish. They spend a fair amount of money. There are rafting, guiding, kayaking, fishing industries that depend on a reasonable, peaceful, safe Rogue River experience. Boss Creek Dam was built with towers to provide cool water. Why? To protect the anadromous fishery. Dams on tributaries have been kept undammed. Why? To protect the fishery. We just defeated a liquid national gas pipeline here on the river. Why? To protect the anadromous fishery. People value recreating on a tranquil, natural river that has salmon and steelhead. The river is a sanctuary for the vast majority of its users. Commercial jet boats on the upper Rogue, I tell you, the most disgusting, disruptive thing I've seen is them tearing ass up the river at Little Butte Creek, pulling donuts right in front of my favorite fishing spot there, and then heading on up at top speed. You know, these uses are incompatible with the uses of the general public and the expectations of people who come here for tourism. So Marine Board, do the right thing here. Decide what is the good for the greatest number of people. Stop the commercial operation of jet boats up above Tovel and limit the number of, limit the horsepower and motors to 10 horsepower. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Apologize to everybody in the room that I'm trying to get people online. First, the individual with the phone number ending 9355. Can you unmute yourself? Is 6333 still there?
They're gone.
DJ, are you available? Feel free to unmute yourself. Okay. So Fred, gonna struggle with this one. Schlatt, followed by Don Vander. Was I close on the name?
Schlatt, yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I don't have a prepared speech or anything, but I do kind of have an interest in this. I enjoy the river, did a lot of rafting. I've taken the commercial boats down. I have friends that have power boats. I spend a lot of time on the river. I'd just like to say, I personally have never witnessed anything but courtesy out of those guys that run those power boats. And I think it's a great asset to the community to be able to take friends when they come from out of town to enjoy the river. Most of the opposition I'm hearing are from a predictable vocal minority, homeowners, fishermen, that, you know, it's a real asset to our area, and be able to take people out and experience it. Not everybody can row a raft. Not everybody owns a power boat. I don't see the harm that they're doing. You can't take those boats above Rattlesnake. It's a very limited stretch of the river. I just, that's it.
Mr. Landry, go ahead. Oh,
My name's Don Landrum, and the reason I came here today is because I notice in this rule writing thing, everybody refers to jet boats as high power, high speed jet boats. I waterfowl hunt on the road from approximately the side of the old Old Ray Dam up to the power lines. I'm sure a lot of people in here know where the power lines are exclusively. I leave early in the morning before daylight. I go to a specific spot, I set up and I hunt ducks. Maybe 4, 5, 6 hours, and we come back to the boat ramp and we go home. I launch from a private ramp down close to Bear Creek. I have an 18-foot sled with a 65 horse outboard jet on it. Hardly high speed or high power. You put 2 old fat guys in there, 4 dogs and associated gear, and I'm lucky to make 15, 16 miles an hour upriver against the current, maybe 18 coming down with a tailwind. But I've never had any trouble with any fishermen. And it seems to me you're putting this restriction in from Fishers Ferry all the way to the dam. It needs to be from Tuvell Bridge up to the dam. And you're going to cut out a bunch of people that waterfowl hunt, but turkey hunt and deer hunt on private access land. They can only access from the river, not anywhere else. I would encourage you to take a look at your horsepower restriction, maybe, you know, at waterfowl season or deer season, turkey season or whatever, so that those people can still access the river with motors above 10 horsepower. my boat doesn't make much of a wake, and when I see fishermen or rafters, I slow down. I've heard comments about tearing up the salmon habitat, spawning habitat, and messing with rafters and inner tubers. Well, that's in the summertime. That's when that happens. When the water's the lowest, that's when you get the most damage from the jet wash, and you got all the rafters. Not in the wintertime. I very seldom see anybody down there, and there's certainly nobody in a Tahiti wearing shorts or a bikini. You know, so you got everything turned around there. That's the wrong time of the year, and I would encourage the Oregon Marine Board to at least look at other people who are not. I couldn't catch a fish with a stick of dynamite and a Bic lighter. So I duck hunt. That's, you know, that's my hobby, and by doing what you're doing, if that goes through, it will totally eliminate any waterfowl hunting on in that area. Thank you.
So, looks like we have Gene Gross followed by Bill Evans.
Cannot get unmuted for whatever. It's the 935.
Mr. Gross, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Gene Gross. I'm also a jet boater, have been since mid-70s. I've raised my family on the river, fishing, also hunting. But it was always the unwritten rule that you never went above rattlesnake. And I think a lot of the problems that we're talking about today are from some recent jet boaters that have designed their boats to where they can jump rattlesnake rapid and keep on going. I think there's a few that have ruined it for everyone. I see there's half a dozen fairly large manufacturers of aluminum jet boats in our valley. And they use their boats to test on the river to test. They also use them to take customers for rides. And without the use of the rope, then they'd have to drive 50 miles out of their way to test their boats or take customers for rides. In all the years that I've been on the river, I have never once seen an accident. My boat also, you're talking, like I've heard, high powered, sounds like these boats are running down a drag strip. They're not. Very seldom are a majority of them running full speed. And we're running in the deepest part of the river because we have to. If we get out of the channel, then we destroy our boats. So parts of the river that I run in, if the water's deep enough, we're not hurting the spawning beds. So I can see the majority of the people, I believe, are here because they don't like the noise.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
My name's Bill Evans. I'm coming out of left field a little bit in that I think the biggest impacts are actually happening between Discovery Park and Two Belt Bridge. the reason I say that is because of erosion. I don't think we're looking at the erosion issue seriously. If you look at the photos in A, you can see the erosion happening on my property. Riverbank left, notice the bank composition. When the jet boats go by, the waves or the wake from the boats come up 3.5 to 4 feet at the base of my boat ramp. And what they do is they erode the topsoil above the alluvial deposit on that bank, and then it caves off much like a glacier does. The second page of that, of Group A, shows a longer stretch. It also shows some of the large cottonwood trees that have been dislodged and put in the river. One of those trees was designated a danger tree and had to be removed by the Jackson County Sheriffs. The third picture shows the erosion in relation to a reclaimed aggregate pit. That aggregate pit is 37 acres and approximately 40 foot deep, 3 times deeper than the Rogue River. The last page is surveyed documentation from Freshwater Trust of exactly how much bank loss that has occurred. The light orange is actually 0.2 acres, which has happened in the last year, and the total amount of loss is 0.85 acres, almost an acre. And by the surveyors, from what they're telling me, that the erosion is happening at a much faster pace. The second series of photos, labeled B, shows the erosion happening at Discovery Park. You can see the rivers headed straight into that bank. Mr. Grimes is saying it's a result of Jackson County removing Gulray Dam. There was an exhaustive study when they removed Gulray Dam, and it was a geomorphic study, and they determined that the backwaters of Gulray Dam only went up as far as the mouth of Bear Creek, which is much lower than this. Again, you look at that second photo, you can see how much bank loss has occurred, and you can also see over a 40-acre aggregate site that's 60 foot deep that the river is headed for. Group C is some of the development that's going on at Discovery Park. They put a total of 5 houseboats in those ponds. They lease those out for aggregate.
Mr. Levin, thank you. Okay, 3 minutes has expired. And we will accept this as written testimony.
And I hope you read the technical study done by that explains this stretch of river.
So did we have more people join online?
Yeah, we have Matt.
Matt, please feel free to unmute yourself and provide public comment. Matt, are you able to unmute yourself? All right, moving on. Somebody joined with phone number. The last 4 digits are 2818. Drop.
Yep.
Okay. So Francis Juan? I'm sorry. How do you pronounce it?
Oh, yeah, Oyoung.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Followed by Todd Miller. Go ahead, Francis.
Hi, my name is Francis Oyoung. I am the Rogue River Keeper Program Manager for Klamath-Siskiyou Wildland Center, also known as KS Wild. I live in Bedford, Oregon, and have worked on watershed restoration and protection for close to 30 years. My comments are on behalf of Rogue River Keeper, a program of KS Wild with over 4,000 supporters. And our program works to protect water quality and aquatic habitat in the Rogue River. I myself hike birdwatch at Denman Wildlife Refuge and use this section of the Rogue for rafting and kayaking. Thanks for coming to Medford to hear testimony from people who care deeply about the Rogue. That's all of us. And thank you for drafting the rules that you did. However, we believe that the proposed rule is insufficient, and we are asking that the proposed Marine Board regulation include protections year-round upstream of Table Rock Road instead of just limiting it to Dodge Bridge. And as you know, there's been hundreds of people who are commenting on this proposed rule with lots of different user groups. And like the prior request for comments, majority of them are asking the Marine Board to prioritize ecological function of the rogue and the other users over the one business that has continued to grow using larger boats and more frequent trips. The proposed rule does nothing to mitigate the impacts of this one business over all other users and the ecological systems. And by all, we expect that this business will continue to work to grow. Science has clearly established the fact that native fish populations and their habitats are at risk of remaining viable in the rogue. That's clearly defined by science. And just like you to refer again to Dr. Michael Parker's literature review about some of the impacts of these craft and why the state of Oregon, numerous private funders, public funders, individual organizations, and state federal agencies have been working to sustain fish habitats for decades. But this one agency is making some rules which will negatively impact it. So we ask that it's not logical, and we hope that the Marine Board will take action to reconsider the proposed rule for not just what's happening now, but for the values of the rogue into the future. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
I run this section of the Rogue River from Old Gargant Dam to Rattlesnake Rapid for 34 years now, mostly along the 8-mile stretch below Table Rock Bridge, which is the least used section of the whole Rogue River. A few years ago, I got my guide's license to provide mariner services on the upper river. The Freshwater Trust monitors the health of all the major rivers in the Pacific Northwest. Every 2 years, they come up to study the river for 2 weeks. I take them to their same GPS waypoints, mostly below Table Rock Bridge. I also take out scientists from the sewage plant along the same stretch of river to take water samples from specific GPS waypoints. I take them out once a month, year-round. As I have said, the 8-mile section below Table Rock Bridge is the least used section of the whole Rogue River. The wildlife along this section is incredible. I take people along that section for nature viewing, bird watching, photography, etc. In the winter, I'll see maybe 1 or 2 non-motorized vessels a day on that part of the river, and most days, none at all. You are proposing closing this section of the river because I am deemed to be a navigational hazard to other vessels, which I am not. I cannot provide my services with a limit on horsepower in this section of the river. I strongly advocate for no changes below Rattlesnake Rapid and absolutely no changes below Table Rock Bridge. If these new proposals were about saving the salmon, I would recommend banning wading out onto the gravel beds above Tubel Bridge for the whole month of October when the salmon are spawning. Nobody wants that though. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Phone number ending 2818. Feel free to unmute yourself and provide testimony.
Star 6 to unmute.
Yeah, star 6 to unmute.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, my name is Scott Howell, and I'm writing this obviously in regards to the jet boat issue there on the Upper Rogue. I was born and raised in the Rogue Valley, and I grew up riding my bike actually to Tuvell Park to fish as a boy. I've been running the river. I've been running the Rogue out there in boats since the 1970s, and I've now made a living solely as a fishing guide operating on the Rogue for over 20 years now. I mention this not to suggest that my voice or use on the river is more meaningful than anybody else's, but I guess just the fact of how old I am and how much time I've spent out there, gives me a knowledge of historical use that, many of the current users may not be aware of. The historical use of jet boats above Tuvel seems to be somewhat up for debate. Though not as heavily trafficked as the other sections of the road, there is plenty of historical precedent of jet boat use above Tuvel. Not only myself, but a number of other personal friends have regularly used our jet boats to access sections of the road all the way up to Kilma Park and have done so for over 40 years. But what is not up for debate is the historical use of jet boats in the section below Tuvel down to the backwaters of the old Gold Ray Dam site. Many currently involved with this jet boat issue were not even river users prior to the dam's removal. There was a time when there was no public boat ramp to take out when floating this section. The only way to access the river below Tuvel was by floating in a drift boat and having private access to take out on the White's property, or pull your drift boat out by hand over the railroad tracks alongside the old Kelly Slough, or by jet boat. There was no floating over Gold Ray Dam to access what is now Fishers Ferry's boat ramp. Jet boats have and continue to be a common sight on this section of the Rogue River. What is also up for little debate is historical use of personal watercraft on the upper Rogue or tributaries, jet skis, etc. There was none. The use of personal watercraft is a relatively new activity. That being said, there is an argument to be made for restricting such use, and I applaud those efforts, but that should be done outside the current proposal being considered. It's also worth mentioning that I am one of the longest running commercial operators that will be affected by the proposed new restrictions. I was guiding out of my jet boat in the Tuvel area long before Mr. Grimes started operating his excursion jet boat business. Ironically, this whole issue started with people taking exception to the big jet boat excursion boats, and under the new proposed restrictions, my guide business will face the biggest impact. The excursion jet boats will operate basically as they currently do, where my business, on the other hand, will be crippled to the point I will basically no longer be able to operate as I have been doing so for over the last 20 years. Much of my guide business is centered around fishing the Rogue for steelhead in the late summer and fall, and then again from February into April. My Rogue season doesn't even kick off in full until the restrictions would go into effect on September 10th. So much of the focus has been on the excursion jet boats. Businesses like mine have seemed to get lost in the mix. It's a hard pill to swallow, being the collateral damage of a big jet boat excursion.
Minutes have expired.
Yes?
We appreciate your testimony.
I didn't realize there was a time restriction. I wish I talked to Oregon State Marine Board twice today. I wish they would have told me that, because I could have definitely.
So you are welcome to provide testimony in writing.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Don Blazer and Mr. Dale Penn.
My name's Don Blazer. I've lived on the road since 1973, and I live about 2 miles above Dodge Bridge. And I want to tell you, historically, I've owned 2 jet boats. I currently own one with a 65 horse motor on it. Historically, most of us in the valley, if not all of us, have used below Table Rock Bridge down for fishing or any other jet boat activity. So my boat, even though we live in the upper road, has never been up there. It's just been something none of us have done. I've heard a lot of talk today about the commercial boats, which is fine, but I think there's a bigger issue, or just as big an issue at stake here, and that is micro mini jets that are coming. And if you take an 18, 20-year-old kid and put him in one of those, if I was that age, I'd have one. And I would have the time of my life, but I'm not going to go at probably a safe limit. I was in the military service. You don't put military guys in the service that are much over 21. So you just don't have the mature level of thinking. And my big concern is the speed of these things and safety. So I'll go on. I'm following up, I've testified before, I'm following up on my previous correspondence and appearance before the board. In August of 2017, I witnessed a young man dive under a jet boat to avoid getting hit. He was swimming with other children on the beach accessed by many local families on Tuvel Road. This area is very popular with families and gets used daily during summer. I reported this to the sheriff's office and they never recorded the incident as they stated there was no law that was broken. I have read your staff recommendations and would like you to answer these questions. How do you propose to protect rafters, fishermen, and swimmers above Table Rock Bridge? Will there be rules in place for public safety? Will jet boats be allowed to travel at speeds 30 to 50 miles per hour through this public area? Why is the personal watercraft label applied to jet skis but not applied to mini or microjets? A 10 horsepower limit would solve all these issues. I'm asking you to use common sense and establish a 10 horsepower limit from Table Rock Road Bridge to the Lost Creek Dam. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Penn.
My name is Dale Penn. I testified in October about 60 years ago about riding down the road from Shady Cove and Inner Tubes and about how that all has changed in 60 years. I listened to your testimony, read the record, and people have documented here today the mass of information. And I tried to think, are there some magic words I can say? And there aren't, because you've heard thousands of words. So I want to talk to you about the law, okay? I'm no different than anybody else, but let me explain a little bit about my training. When I wasn't riding on the road, I was going to law school. I went to Salem. I was there for 30 years as a lawyer, did a lot of legislation. The governor appointed me as director of the lottery commission. I had lots of public hearings and I drafted lots of administrative rules, including the ones that expanded it from video poker to line games. Then I was a circuit judge in Marion County for 10 years. I retired as the presiding judge. Because most state agencies are in Salem, I had a number of cases where I would rule on administrative rules. So, just as you are located in Salem. So the first thing is going to be, what is your purpose and what is your legal authority? I got to hurry because I'm halfway done. And it was to resolve or reduce conflict. Okay, I appreciate you've helped Shady Cove. You've prevented future conflicts, but you have done nothing for the purpose of these hearings and everything else. The kitchen table has told you, if you do not do something, this problem will get worse. And you're doing nothing. Okay. Number two, you look at, okay, what is the record? Does it support your actions? And people have documented well what the record is. And I will say, at the last hearing, you had the operator and one Jackson County commissioner who personally supported it. Those are the only two people who supported it in October. You've had a few more people today. That's good. But you have to balance this huge amount of information and testimony against one commercial operation. That isn't going to withstand legal analysis. Number three, is it good policy? For all these reasons, people have said, no, you're simply protecting joyriding. I'm going to finish my sentence. I'm going to finish my sentence. It is 3:30 and you have a half an hour more.
Out of fairness for the entire
process. All right. And I'm even going to talk about the blatant conflict of interest of one of your commissioners who, their boss, testified for this and then had to say it's not a personal opinion.
People. So I would invite Mr. Haskell, followed by Ms. Grimes.
It's a tough act to follow.
Yeah. He was a tough judge.
Yeah. Thanks for this opportunity. I'll read from a statement and give it to you. So, as a former licensed guide, ran trips on the section of the road in question, Duval State Park down to Bear Creek. This is before the removal of Go Ray Dam. I have firsthand knowledge of the nature of the river in that reach, changes that have occurred due to high water events, the nature of the fishery, especially in late summer and early fall when salmon spawn on the brims. When I add, I'm also aware of the use of jet boats and sleds by other guides and fishermen, because before the dam was taken out, that's how you get downriver to Salmon Rock, and that's how you get back to Tubal. So there's a precedent for jet boats and sleds on that reach. With that in mind, I urge the board to limit the reach of commercial jet boats to that 5-mile section of river. Do not allow watercraft with over 10 horsepower above Table Rock Road at any time. Someone mentioned the gentleman's agreement above Rattlesnake. When I was doing the guiding, the gentleman's agreement was you don't go above Table Rock Road. If push came to shove, I would strongly make the case to limit commercial jet boats over 10 horse to 126 days above Table Rock Road during the season, May 8th through September 10th. That would amount to 1 trip per day, covering 10 river miles upriver, a round trip of 20 miles, as opposed to the 300 days in the proposed rules. I have no idea how the board came up with 300 days, except it just reinforces the status quo. That's the way it is now. So I would suggest if it's going to happen, limit it to 126 days. You can control that by looking at the schedule that the jet boat operators have, how many trips they have up to Rattlesnake. The board statement regarding cost compliance, the point is made that one small business would be affected, but the section omits financial costs to other businesses such as sport fishing shops, guide services related to the world famous fisheries for salmon and steelhead. The board also states the proposed rule would allow swimming, paddling, fishing to occur without interference from high-powered boats. That's just not true. Not true. Kitchen table activities produce substantial public opinion. The proposed rule basically adopts the status quo while avoiding any significant concessions by the commercial operators. I believe the participants spoke out for more
We're welcome to accept written comment.
Yes, thank you very much.
Ms. Grimes? You're good? Okay, did we have any additional people online? So we are here till 6 p.m. We are adjourned. And
May I address your handout today? 1 minute is all I ask.
Sir,
You got, yeah, you got a handout.
no, I'm not, I didn't invite you back up. We are taking a recess. I'm gonna use the restroom. We'll be back. But
Oh, okay. Will you give me a minute?
I will talk to you personally.
I'd like to just put it on the record, small
Sure.
businesses, yeah,
Sir,
contact. And
you're
did you
welcome
do
to
an
provide written
administrative
testimony.
rule advisory committee? If not, why
Welcome
not?
to
And you
provide
did
written
not.
testimony, sir.
And I just would encourage the board, you better read those 2 sections, because you got a problem.
Thank you, sir.
So, anyway.
I get to work.
I knew that. I don't think that probably. Okay.
Feet per second. He'll give you the river.
This is the cutest little protector.
Thank you. Okay.
So are we ready?
By talking to you or?
Both of us.
Camera.
Where's that? You ready? Yep.
Ms. Masterson, free to go ahead.
Did I introduce myself? I'm Denise Kraus. I live in rural Jackson County, near Ashland. I don't live anywhere near the Rogue River. But I've been following this the whole time. Everything they've published, everything, I've been reading about it, but I've gone to the Oregon table sessions and come to these hearings and have listened to people talk and just trying to get information about what's really going on. I do enjoy the Rogue River on the hike and whatever. So what I want to say, I think, is that I'm hearing so much feedback about how we need to protect the river and so much really good data to support that. And when I go to these meetings, it seems that the vast majority of people are trying to protect the river. And I think that what I noticed when y'all, the Marine Board, published the article in the paper with the regulations, it seemed like those regulations were just really disappointing because it's like it seemed from my perspective that you looked at how the commercial jet boats are functioning and then wrote the rules around that and supported everything that they're doing without putting any limitations or without hearing the concerns and all the evidence that's been presented. So I think that that's a real missed opportunity. I think that the role of the Marine Board is to protect the river, the people that represent folks, the Hero people. And I think that's not happening here. And I'm not really sure why. Just, I know there's a business and you want to protect a business, but we're talking about generations of enjoyment on this river. This river is just so valuable to this valley and to this part of Oregon. It's something that we enjoy, but our kids should be able to, our grandkids should be able to, and we have to protect it. That's up to us. If we don't do that, nobody's going to. Thank God they did that for Crater Lake. Crater Lake, people wanted to develop a road on the inside, and they didn't let it happen. And because of that, it is incredibly pristine, and we enjoy it. We can still enjoy it, and it will be protected for years to come. We need to do that. This is up to us. This Rogue River is so important to this valley, and we need to protect it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comment. We're back on recess until somebody else decides to show up.
I know somebody's on their way.
Okay.
Yeah, I know two people.
Yeah, we published that we'd be here till 6 o'clock, so
Right.
we'll be here till 6.
Yeah, and some have to get off. work.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we timed it. Courtney. Mark Courtney?
Yeah, I reside at 8825 High Banks Road.
Okay,
So
just hang on a minute.
go ahead.
We're gonna give you 3 minutes. Jennifer's getting set up because we are recording this.
Perfect. That's awesome. You guys are awesome. So Jennifer and Alan.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys for taking the time to put up with all this.
Happy to do it.
Oh, you know what? It's all part of it. So, and you guys are both Marine Board.
Yes.
Yeah, just for clarity. Yeah.
And just to add to the confusion,
Right,
we're the Marine Board, the agency,
right.
but the Marine, we report to a board, the board makes a final decision.
Great. So 100%, you're with the organization, but you're not part of the
We're not the board.
I got you. No, and the board, yeah. Anyway, we'll get to a couple of those things. It's super simple. I'm easy guy. So you guys just let me know when you're ready and I'll give you my 2 cents and we'll keep it short because I still got shit to do and you guys have more people to listen to whine and complain.
Ready? Ready?
Whenever you're ready. Thank you, Mr. Courtney.
Okay, so anyway, again, I'm Mark Courtney. My address is 8825 and also 8784 High Banks Road. So I am officially the only residence on the river with over 1,500 feet of riverfront on both sides of the river between Tuville Park and Discovery Park and or actually Tuville Park all the way to Fishers Ferry. So 2 things for me. If we're going to put a condition on the river from Fishers Ferry to the dam, like the 10 to 5 condition for operating with tour boats or charter boats, I don't know why we would stop it at Tuville Bridge. There's just as many river users that go from Tuville down to Fishers Ferry. I mean, if they put it in Dodge, they don't take out at Tuville, right? They go down Fishers Ferry. So I know we had a bunch of probably people with a lot more money than me and a lot more whining and complaining than me. What happens is when we reduce those guys in their trips from Tuville down, they're now at less than 3 river miles from Tuville to Discovery Park with the charter boat, which is only going to increase the amount of trips that they do every day. And I'm not just saying just by my house. I'm saying that is a small piece of it. I have and still have cameras on the river. I can record you and show you hundreds and hundreds of trips. I can show you the multiple trips per hour and it's excessive. I love what they do. I like that they're doing it. I think it's cool for the community. I don't like hearing it at 9 o'clock at night. That's my bitch. But I like the 10 to 5 operating. I think that's reasonable. And I think that it should go from Fishers Ferry on up. I don't know why we would make a condition from Table Rock up and not take it to Fishers Ferry. I mean, if we're going to put in a condition, let's put in a condition. I also think our 10 horsepower regulation, I know I'm going to run short on time here. I'll probably have to come in under a different name, but the same thing is the time frame for the 10 horsepower regulation seems to kind of fit the charter boat scheduling and doesn't necessarily impact the fishery, the spawning beds, the noise pollution for the waterfowl, the cranes. There's watchable wildlife, has cameras and stuff on properties right next to mine. So anyway, again, I'm kind of running out of time. I just feel like if we're going to put a condition on that piece of river for the charter boats, I think that it needs to be from Fishers Ferry all the way up. I think it's kind of silly to just only go Table Rock above. Because all we're going to do is we're going to condense their traffic and those trips are going to go to 40 an hour. I mean, they're by my house every 6 minutes and I have the cameras and the stuff to show them. So anyway, I don't need to take it anywhere.
I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
I wanted to get that in. And then with the board, this is just a question. I'm not griping about anything. I want to put a dock back in. And there was a dock at that residence. There's nothing when I called the Marine Board the first time, and I also called.
So Department of State.
DSL had 0 condition for me to put in a seasonal dock. 0.
They're the ones with the rules on docks.
So if I put my dock in, can I get the Marine Board to enforce the wake zones around my dock?
The wake zone is for 6 or more vessels.
Okay. I got 1,500 feet of riverfront. I can make it for 20 vessels if you want.
I'm not requesting anything.
All I'm saying is, I mean, we can, we can poke bears and push buttons, but I've kind of had an ask of them, and I appreciate everything that you guys are doing. I just wanted to put in my 2 cents, so thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hey, Mike. Hey. Oh, hi, how are you? Good.
I'm well.
So we're just giving everybody 3 minutes to provide any information they'd like to provide. We do have a timer. And I think that's basically, we're here to listen. We're not here to debate, answer questions. This is a time for you to provide input to us. So whenever you're ready, we can start the 3-minute clock.
Okay, and then just address you directly. Okay. Well,
Yeah, you went and started. I grew up in Medford, born here, and I have been going to the Tewville Park and the Denman Wildlife Area now for well over 30 years, and have done everything from learning how to fly fish, swimming in the river, bird watching, seen plenty of wildlife there. I take family members and friends there to enjoy the scenery, and from what I understand, the jet boat the regulations would still permit a jet boat to traverse over 2 miles above the bridge through Denman Wildlife Area, Tewville, and I believe it is a critical refuge for many wildlife species, including blue heron, bald eagles, otters, beavers, minks, and western pond turtles. Species currently listed by ODFW as sensitive and recently proposed for listing by the Fish and Wildlife Service threatened with extinction. This is also a critical spawning area for spring, summer, and fall salmonid species. And the size, power, and speed of the turboats and frequency and trip will have adverse environmental impacts to all the above species. This is also a place where children learn how to wade and swim in the waters of Tewville Park. It's frequented by picnickers and basically, yes, I would say that the having jet boats on this section of the river is completely incompatible with all of these activities. Strongly urge you to not allow them go up and down through there. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Yeah. Have you been out there?
I have.
Pretty exceptional.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful river. I had the opportunity, and this is off the record. The Marine Board does a lot of training with our puppies, and so I got to be part of that. Was in a raft from
Hey, can you hear me?
we can. This is
What do you know? What do you know? My success with Teams. Yay.
Hey.
So
So we're giving everybody the opportunity to provide testimony for 3 minutes. If you have any questions about the process, happy to answer those for you. But if not, feel free to start your testimony and you'll have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. I've got, a little comment here, and happy holidays to you all, 2024. I'll be submitting written comments once again regarding jet boating rules, especially opposing commercial jet boating on the Upper Rogue. I'm what one would call a Southern Oregon conservation voter, and I remain surprised in this day and age that all people around here aren't united in prioritizing the sundowning of activities that degrade super precious natural resources like the Rogue River ecosystem. You know, when you misuse it, you lose it. Okay. During the last hearing in Medford, when you all were kind enough to come to Medford, which we appreciated, I sat there in person, and I kid you not when I say I'm still feeling insulted by Supervisor Roberts' ramble, implying that if you, the board, give an inch to those of us who oppose anything, regarding unlimited jet boating on the Upper Rogue, then we, whoever we are, I don't know, the radical fringe, which I'm certainly not, will find a way to get rid of all recreation activities. And I just wanted to scream, hey, Roberts, we recreate too. All of us, all of us. But, to Roberts and to people who don't understand, many citizens did see a problem, obviously, which is what sparked these OSMB hearings. And just pardon me if I just say, I wonder out loud for a second here whether Roberts can really navigate 21st century realities. Because, the way I see it, we're in an era when government needs to enact a lot of protections that maybe we don't welcome. The way I see the world, there's always people on all sides of an issue. But here we are. I think the Rogue River, the Upper Rogue's health is challenged in many ways and must be protected. So I'm just kind of shocked why the lack of unanimous support for environmental stewardship. Nobody's trying to get rid of all recreation, but this is where we are in the present time. And so in both hearings, I'm dismayed by the lack of expressed interest or knowledge or whatever about how the natural environment works. In other words, I just see little concern overall being expressed or shown for the health of the invaluable Rogue River ecosystem, which obviously includes water quality and fish health and the health of other river wild animals and plants. Oh, and hey, the health and well-being of humans who live along the Upper Rogue. So again, misuse it, then lose it. And I'll submit my comments. And I thank you so much for your time and attention, for coming to Medford today. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you showing up as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. by testimony for 3 minutes. And this is just an opportunity for the Marine Board to hear your comments. We're not answering questions, or we're not going to debate the rule. We're just here listening to you. Okay. So, are you ready, Jennifer?
Yeah.
All right,
So
sorry to
whenever
keep
you're
it to
ready.
3 minutes. I'm going to skip over some stuff. So
We do have a timer up.
Yeah, help you.
And I apologize, but I will cut you off at 3 minutes. I've been cutting everybody off at 3 minutes. So whenever you're ready, feel free to start.
All right, go ahead. My name's John Pogue. I'm the current president of the Rogue Fly Fishers, and want to thank you for letting me speak today. The Marine Board has the authority to regulate through administrative rules, voting in specific locations or specific waterways in interest of protecting public safety, property, water quality, fish and wildlife resources, or to reducing excessive congestion and conflict between users. I'll skip down a ways because I know you guys know most of this. The current proposals do not meet this criteria. There are blind corners that the commercial jet boat cannot maneuver through safely according to marine safety rules. The Hellgate jet boat operation has been required to use spotters on their unsafe corners. However, Rogue Jet Boat Adventures does not have to use spotters on their bad corners. Despite this, there was a serious accident this year with the Hellgate tour boat. And it wasn't even identified as a high-risk area where the accident happened. And it's only a matter of time before an accident occurs in the upper road. Now, for the enforcement of marine rules, there have been several complaints about Rogue Jet Boat Adventures, but the Sheriff's Department doesn't record a phoned-in complaint without some sort of evidence. I recently filed a criminal complaint against Rogue Jet Boat Adventures for failing to slow down within 200 feet of a waiting angler. I had video proof of one of the jet boat captains slowing down as he went by. I waved and said thank you. No sooner than I got the words thank you out of my mouth, Mr. Grimes came down in a separate boat at full throttle, never slowing down. I reported this to Deputy Prinz, Jackson County Marine Sheriff. I furnished Mr. Prinz with the video. Recently, a guide was cited after he was videoed by Rogue Jet Boat Adventures for a marine violation. The person received a citation in the mail with a fine. I recently texted Sheriff Prinz to see if Rogue Jet Boat Adventures was cited or fined for the complaint that I reported. I never got a response from Deputy Prinz other than who is this, which leads me to believe that no fine or citation was issued. And this is a huge problem and more evidence of the favoritism, nepotism, crony capitalism, and the good old boy network that we are faced with our local agencies here in Jackson County regarding Rogue Jet Boat Adventures. Now for the fish. First off, Dan Van Dyke is not a member of the Rogue Fly Fishers, nor has he ever been a member of the Rogue Fly Fishers. The Rogue Fly Fishers, the Middle Rogue Steelheaders, and Southern Oregon Fly Fishers all do volunteer work for ODFW on occasion. We usually don't work with Dan directly, but someone from the Salmon Trout Enhancement Program. Grimes lied at the last meeting saying that Dan was a member of our club and that he did work for us, which he does not. Dan's testimony was very good at the last meeting. However, when questioned by Mr. Withy, there were some things that Dan missed. Since you were making guidelines, is that 3 minutes?
That's 3 minutes.
Oh,
So
right.
we are accepting written testimony.
Okay.
So you have that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You can send it to us via email. You can give it to us today.
Okay.
And this will go to the board.
Okay.
This is recorded and that information will also go to the board. They've been very good at testimony, watching the video.
Okay.
So.
Right. And I can leave this with you guys.
You can leave it with us, yeah.
I'll take
Jennifer will take it. I appreciate you coming down today. I don't doubt coming over.
Let me put my name on here.
Guess we're not calling 2 people up at the same time anymore.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Feel free. So just to give you the same spiel, so we're giving everybody 3 minutes to present. It's called a hearing, but we're here to listen. And so it's not a back and forth. So anyways. Are you ready, Jennifer?
I'm ready.
So whenever you start, you have a 3-minute clock.
Okay.
Okay.
Don't talk too fast. Hi, I'm Emily Grimes. I own Rogue Jet Adventures. So our opposition says there is nothing but conflict with us on the river. From my point of view, we have had conflict with the same 15 people for the last 13 years. Most are homeowners that can't cross. They own property along a navigable highway, and the others are fly fishers that don't seem to have the capacity for change. 5 generations of my family was born and raised at Table Rock and ran jet boats as soon as they were invented. Traditional use is subjective. My husband and I started this business from nothing. We started with a 10-seater boat, and as we could afford it, have upgraded. It has been quoted 100 times that we would never go larger than an 18-seater boat, but we did. Why? Because of the overwhelming positive response of our tours, and we found a boat builder that figured out how to seat more people without building our boats much bigger. Would our opposition rather us run 10 smaller boats instead of just 3? River users that choose to fish or recreate on this multi-use section of the Upper Rogue can manage to potentially be disrupted for 30 seconds as we pass by, just like our tours can be disrupted for minutes at a time as we wait for fishermen or other boaters to get out of the only navigable river channel. But it's a multi-use river. It's okay. Fun fact, when a boat is on plane, it creates the smallest wake. Slower speeds create larger wakes. Many are uneducated about that fact and interpret it as us being discourteous. A lot of negative comments have been organized by environmental organizations. Why have we not targeted our customer base of tens of thousands to defend us? Because we are not drama, and that seems like cheating. We let our growing yearly numbers of locals and visitors tell the story. Families in all walks of life want and have a need for what we offer. As far as banning jet boats on the Upper Rogue for 8 months of the year, our off season, 8 months of the year, has most of the best fishing opportunities. This completely has the potential to devastate our local river guides financially. Please do not do that. As far as banning jet boats on the Shady Cove section of the Upper Rogue, very few jet boats choose to operate this section. Why ban them all? I strongly feel that rafting companies need to be held responsible for educating beginners with rafting and the rules of the Rogue. There's an average of 1 death a year on that section of river, the majority from inexperienced boaters. Can you imagine what would happen if our jet boats were the cause of 1 death a year on our tour section of river? This does not happen because we are professionals with years of driving experience. Because someone die as a result of one of our jet boats or another, absolute accidents happen. That's why it is called an accident. I think much of this seemed tension could be relieved by river users getting properly educated on the rules of the Rogue. What it means to recreate on a multi-use river.
I appreciate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Yeah. Figure that probably should